Games have brought nearly endless joy to humanity. In their various forms, games can teach us a variety of skills, from the patience of playing a game like solitaire, to free word association and vocabulary that comes from hours of playing Scrabble, with a nice glass of wine, of course. Games, although challenging, will leave you satisfied, knowing that you are stimulating your mind. Playing too much of a game can leave you bored, though.
No, God! No, God, please, no!
Welcome to the age of golfing in your living room and bowling without getting virus fingers. Look at how much fun he is having. Tired of playing solitaire by yourself? Well, fire up that Nintendo Switch and play Smash Brothers with people all around the world. This immersive gameplay is a great way to not only challenge yourself, but to have friendly competition, all from the comfort of the couch. But there is a dark side. Many popular video games feature shooting and killing on an unprecedented scale. Although it might start as honest fun, these games can turn good people into savage animals, thirsting for another kill until eventually, killing cartoons isn't enough. If played too much, these gamers want blood.
There's something else video games can rob you of. Your sense of right and wrong. The Bible says that God hates anyone loving violence. The fact is, video games promote lots of things the Bible condemns. Violence, immoral sex, and spiritism. Is it just a game? Imagine you were doing that in real life. You know, all that stuff in the game you're playing. What kind of person would you be? Your choice in video games may say a lot about who you are and what you think is right and wrong.
I'm Wally, and welcome to the JW Thoughts channel. In this episode, we will be examining how Jehovah's Witnesses view violent video games, my own personal experience of venturing into this deplorable world of ridiculous violence, and seeing if the Jehovah's Witness position on whether or not video games are beneficial or harmful is actually good for society. So let's get into it. The first thing I want to start off by saying is that the subject of video games, especially with regard to parenting, is one of the most difficult subjects that I think I've come across in my conversations with parents.
I wrote a blog post a while ago about why I f***ing hate video games.
Now, the only reason that I'm really saying this is because I just want to let everyone, or the 10 people that are watching, but the world know I understand how difficult of a dynamic that video games are, especially with regard to parents trying to monitor and getting a grasp on what's fair, what's beneficial, what's not beneficial, what's the punishment. There's all sorts of different factors to cover. So I understand that. So if I'm making light of, video games or anything, it's not because of that, it's because of my experience growing up as a Jehovah's Witness. But the Watchtower's overall message when it did come to video games was that, yes, they could be entertaining, but only if they were the right type. So if you wanted to play sports games like Madden or Tiger Woods or FIFA, okay, well, that was okay. That seems properly harmless. But then things got a little dicey when you got into the world of violent video games. And I can still distinctly remember a moment from my childhood when I realized that some of my friends were actually playing these dubious violent video games. And the one, I'm going to date myself here, but all the way back to the Nintendo 64 and the 007 GoldenEye game.
GoldenEye. Load a rumble pack and see how it feels when 007 meets N64.
I remember when people were saying that they were playing this, and I just had this weird moment where I thought, people play shooting games? But shooting games are violent video games, and we're not supposed to play that. And of course I had been conditioned because of all the messages that I heard, coming from Daddy Watchtower, telling us about the dangers and when it came to violent video games.
I promised Akil I'd go out in service with him after school. Soon, I was showing him my video games. And surprisingly, he liked video games too. But he said he chose to be selective. He began to describe the gladiators in ancient Rome. People would come from all over to watch them fight to the death. And while the spectators weren't in any physical danger, the real danger came over time. Repeatedly watching the bloodshed and the killing, it was dulling their senses, and they wanted more of it.
Anyone that grew up in the organization knows exactly what they're saying when they say can provide some wholesome enjoyment, but is it really worth your precious time? Well, what else do they tie their precious time to? Study, meetings, field ministry, and all that good stuff. So that's what your precious time should really go to. And I call this tacit manipulation because they don't come out and say, do not play video games. But they come out and say, is it really worth this precious time that you have? And any suggestion that the organization gives isn't really a suggestion, even if that's how they formulate it. Suggestions are to be followed, full stop. And if you're not following the suggestions, you're either going to get yourself kicked out, or you're at least going to be seen as bad associates. Like the friends that I cut off because I found out that they were playing 007 GoldenEye, which was a shooting game. And in my mind, sorry, bad association. Can't talk to you anymore. Loved hanging out with you. It was great getting pizza and ice cream, but sorry, nope, you play 007. So that's a little bit funny. And then as I got a little bit older, I actually came to a sort of crossroads with this very hard-nosed stance that I had about violent video games. And me and my friends just got done playing football. And we were all sitting there, and I heard one of them ask another one of our friends, hey, do you think we should invite Wally? And obviously it was fairly overt, so you're like, well, what should you invite me to? Well, apparently they had started playing Halo recently, and automatically, all the alarm bells start going off in my head.
To apostate ideas.
Oh, apostate, Satan, everything bad that could happen is going to happen right now. And of course I can't play Halo. But it was interesting because at that time I was a ministerial servant and it's not that it even matters about titles. Why are we even talking about titles? Anyway, I was in good standing within the organization at this time, and so were all of my friends. These were the people that would be on stage during our circuit assemblies and our district conventions. And, we had our little group of people that were considered exemplary. So when they suggested that they were playing Halo, initially the alarm bells went off, but then I kind of thought, well, they must have God's blessing because they're in these privileged, quote unquote, privileged positions, and they seem all right. So maybe it's actually not that bad. So there we went, and I just went along with it, and I tried playing Halo, and it was really fun. It was really, really fun. But here's a quote that kind of highlights exactly why I had this sort of fear built into my personality when it came to violent video games. It says, quote, it's giving a example of a young kid that was playing violent video games. Anyway, quote, "At first, I played games that were relatively harmless, but gradually I started to play games that were violent and demonic. Eventually, I was playing video games for about 15 hours each day." End quote. So my thought was, oh, okay, so if I'm playing Mario or Wii Sports, that's cool. But if I start playing Halo, then I'm just going to be teleported Willy Wonka style through the crazy teleportation with all the weird things.
This is kind of strange.
Yeah, strange, Charlie, but it's fun.
Into playing video games for 15 hours each day. And it's also funny to think about, like, just that quote, that they're using it as a scare tactic. Who are this kid's parents that are letting this kid play for 15 hours each day? I would love to meet these kids' parents and ask them, like, what are you doing? You're basically, you can't eat, you can't shit, you can't sleep. All you have to do is play video games and go to school, and that's all of the hours that you have in the day. That's it. Anyway, so that's pretty funny to me. So it was kind of built into my head, like, oh, okay, you start playing Halo, and I gotta quit my job. I gotta stop going out in the ministry. I gotta divorce my wife because I'm just gonna be playing video games all day long. And when we started playing, just having a good time. We were just eating ice cream, eating pizza, and shooting some aliens, and it was fun. We weren't like, just the crazy people like yelling at the screen and breaking controllers.
About whom we spend a lot of time with. People who don't love Jehovah can stretch and misshape our minds, providing a stem or a handle for the world to hold us by.
Now, I think that this particular moment was really important for me because waking up from your indoctrination doesn't come immediately. It might feel immediate, and when I first woke up, as maybe you saw in the entrance video, beginning video, introduction video,
Yes.
it did come as like this moment, but looking back, I really understand all the little gradual steps that you sort of have to take. And that's the approach that I think is the most effective, is if someone comes and's like, well, what is Beth Sareem? You'd be like, I've never heard of that before. Oh, well, Joseph S. Rutherford and had this house and he thought David was going to be resurrected there. You just come off as like kind of a crazy person and no one will take you seriously. But I honestly believe that these little tiny steps can be quintessential to people waking up. And I think that was a big deal for me. You kind of ring this tiny little bell and you hear it when you're stuck in the doldrums of mind control from the Watchtower, and you kind of follow that bell one step closer at a time. And anyway, it is quite important. So eventually I actually had to get on stage and give a meeting part about violent video games.
Oh, this is just too good.
And when we had to do that, it was like, this makes me a little bit uncomfortable because here we've been playing Halo, obviously not telling anybody, because if you told someone, see you later. You wouldn't obviously get disfellowship for playing Halo, but you would certainly have your privileges called into question. I fully imagine you'd be in the back room with some elders in a hot second. Anyway, so me and one of my other friends, we had to actually give this meeting part. And so we talked about it as sort of this was building up and we were preparing. And we said, yeah, well, maybe, we should probably kind of stop playing because it's not that good. And so we all just kind of dispersed a little bit, and I don't know whether or not they stopped playing entirely or they just were telling me, oh, we're not going to play anymore. But in any sense, that was an end to an era, and it's actually really sad when I think about it, because here we were, just nice, good young kids, young adults, just having fun with each other. We were just sitting around shooting some aliens. Sure, there was guns involved, but it wasn't making us violent people. It wasn't making me more angry. I didn't feel more angry. I was happy when I was playing with my friends. And this whole notion, and it's not, to be honest and fair, it's not just with the Jehovah's Witnesses that have this idea that, well, if you play violent video games, it will make you a violent person. Unfortunately, it's something that's quite common. And again, I'm not necessarily promoting that, because it's all depending on, the person's personality, their upbringing, but it's something to be monitored. And if something is enjoyable to someone and they're not having any deleterious effects, I don't see any reason why they couldn't continue to do that. And that's how I personally feel about it now. Will my opinion change? Maybe. Now, I have seen examples of when it does make people angrier.
Acting what to say when a challenge comes my way. At times it's tough for me out there. And so I turn to God in prayer. I pray I'll pass each.
It does make people turn into monsters. And you think, well, it would just be better if you never had to play this game ever again. But then obviously that doesn't get you anywhere, because then all their friends are playing it, then they feel left out, and then that also has consequences involved with it. So it's dynamic. And so everything has to be sort of taken on balance. But just looking back at that, it kind of makes me sad that, this group of friends that we had, and this nice cohesion, and we were just playing games with each other, and we had to stop because I had to give a meeting part, and the closing prayer, talk about the meeting. And we thank you for this nice counsel that you've given us this evening to help us direct our course, so that way we can always make sure that we're following your steps closely. And so after I got done giving this concluding prayer, obviously I was a little bit worried about it, and we never really played any violent video games after that. Now, a little bit later on, after I had woken up and was still physically in the organization, but had mentally discarded all of my beliefs with respect to the Jehovah's Witnesses' particular notions on the Bible, I thought, you know what? I'm actually gonna go back into it, because I really enjoyed that time and it was fun. So then I started playing, some other different first-person shooting video games and everything. And again, much to my surprise, I didn't become like a violent serial killer that wanted to go out and murder people. And it was quite fun. So it really just became a thing for me that I had after I left the organization, that was a symbol that life outside the organization doesn't mean that you become this evil, satanic person, but you're just a regular dude with a controller in your hand. And I had to actually go through this really interesting time, because whenever you're friends with people, your Xbox account will actually track like what games you're playing. So I had to create a secondary Xbox Gold account so I could play other games that weren't linked to my friends. And I used the name Edmond Dantes. I guess that'll just be a little Easter egg for those of you that like 17th century literature. But anyway, for me, that name, I still use it today on my Xbox account, and it just kind of stands as another symbol and reminds me, maybe I only get a chance to play something once every 3 weeks or something, but it just kind of reminds me every time I open it up and I see that little corner where it says Edmond Dantes, and it's just like, you know what? Maybe obedience isn't better than sacrifice, and why should we be sacrificing our freedom, our fun, our enjoyment, our life. This is the only life that we know we have. What's the point of sacrificing that for obeying something that we can't actually prove? Anyway, that's about all I have to say for video games. Please, if you enjoyed this content, let me know about that down in the comments, and like and subscribe. That helps out the channel a lot. I know we're just getting started, so there's going to be a lot of blunders, but hopefully we can work through it together. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.